Welcome to this session. Well, today I'm very happy because though still I'm just online, as Guya just said, I'm very happy for several reasons. First of all, because this is the first seminar in this series in which I have been taking part in the organization, thanks to my colleague Guya Accornero. So many thanks for inviting me to join this research group more or less about 1 year ago, and also for introducing me to this seminar. Second reason why I'm so happy today is that the seminar will focus on one of the most significant North African countries, but I would say still rather unknown and not so much involved. Sorry, if you can turn the audio off. Okay, thank you. I would say still rather unknown and not so much involved in the Portuguese public debate. So focusing on what is going on in the country nowadays, and in particular exploring different social and political actors, I'm sure today we'll understand a little more about the relevance of the current protests that are taking place, and even more this year, 2021, 10 years from what has been called the Arab Springs, how promising and popular uprising coming from the peoples of many different countries across the region have ultimately resulted, some of them back to authoritarian regimes, others to social polarization, and others also passing through very difficult years of civil wars. And the third reason I'm very happy today is that it's really important to follow up with the future initiatives to contribute to the increasing interest in the Middle East and North Africa within the Portuguese academia, but I would say also through a larger public debate. And hopefully the next events will be again in present at ISCTE. So now I would like to introduce our speaker, Sabri Benalycherif. Just a few words because I'm sure that Sabri will have the opportunity during the talk to underline a few aspects of his work. Sabri is based between Lisbon and Alger, is an independent photographer and a member of studio Hans Lucas. He graduated in business administration, then he had several professional experiences in North Africa and Latin America. He decided to turn to documentary photography and photojournalism in 2017. Interested in social and political issues through a documentary and photojournalistic approach and assuming the role of image activism, his series focus in particular on North Africa and mostly on daily challenges experienced in the region. His work has been published in many international newspapers and magazines, such as Le Monde, Libération, L'Express, Le Monde Diplomatique, Il Sole 24 Ore, Grazie, and he was also exhibited at the Avignon Festival in July 2019. Thank you, Sabri. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Julia. Thank you, Guya, for inviting me and letting me, giving me the opportunity to present my work. So yeah, you made my presentation. Throughout my work, I have covered quite extensively the protests that have been through Algeria during the year 2019. So it's true that this talk should have existed last year, but because of the lockdown and pandemics, so we're doing this year. So we're going to go back to early 2019, and I will try to explain some things about this protest, and especially my experience as a photographer, the way I try to document these protests. So I'm going to share the screen so that you can follow my presentation on each of your computers. And you tell me if it's okay. Okay, perfect. So basically, what I'm going to do is that I am going to give a brief introduction about Algeria. I know that in this room, a lot of people are familiar with the country. So I will be very brief, but I think it's important to give a bit of context to understand what's going on, and especially to understand the roots of this movement called Hirak. Hirak in Arabic means movement, and that's how this protest movement has been called in Algeria. And then I will focus on different features of this movement, because when I followed and I covered and I documented the Hirak, I got very interested because it was a very diverse movement with many attributes, and there were different fringes of the population that have played an important role in the movement. So I will describe and showcase some of my images around the football ultras, the way the Algerians in the streets have used sarcasm and humor to comment and to protest against the regime. We will focus also on the feminists that were occupying the streets as well to claim for their rights, but also to protest as part of the Hirak. The students as well have had a very important initiatives throughout the movement, and we will finish by saying that it was a very peaceful and cross-generational movement. Families going in the streets, older people with very young children, and you will realize, having a look at the images, that it was quite a unique movement. Then I will conclude by telling or explaining about my experience as a photographer, what I felt, and how I approached this movement. And then obviously you will be able to ask questions. But yeah, I want to tell you that if you want to interrupt during the presentation, if you have any specific question, do not hesitate. And I want to, yeah, it's more, I think it's easier for everyone if it's a discussion than a formal presentation. So do not hesitate. So yeah, a quick introduction on Algeria. So as probably many of you already know, but very briefly, yes, it is, as Julia said, a very significant country on the southern shore of the Mediterranean. Significant because of its size. It's the biggest country in Africa. Just to give you an idea, it's 5 times the size of France. 43 million people, of which a large majority, nearly a half, is under 25. So this is a big opportunity for its government, but also a big challenge. And it's we can say also it's a connected population. Almost 17 million connect every day to the internet, and it's a quite urban population, much more than its neighbors, than Morocco and Tunisia, for example. The last figures I saw was that more than 70% live in urban areas. So this is quite significant. The economy of the country is mainly based on gas and oil exports. But we have to stress out that there are some diminishing production capacity, and this creates an absolute necessity for the government and for the country to diversify its economy. A big challenge again. We can say that Algeria have gone through a social peace throughout these years, but again, we have to stress out that this social peace is often acquired through a policy of subsidies. In Algeria, a lot of basic commodities are not correlated with the real cost of production. For example, if you're going to pay a bill, an electricity bill in Algeria, it will cost very little money comparing with the real cost of production. And this is what we call in Algeria the économie de la rente, and this allows the government to buy social peace and to co-opt some fringes of the population. Politically, I think we can say that it's a military regime since the independence in '62 from France. Even if we had some civilians presidents, the backbone of the regime is military, and it still is. Yeah, maybe a few words about the 90s, because Algeria has gone through a terrible decade during the 90s with the so-called civil war, when the Islamists won the general election in '91, and then the electoral process has been stopped. And after that, the country entered a cycle of violence, which led to more than 200,000 deaths. So this is a big trauma for the Algerians, and we will talk later about the consequences of this trauma. And to conclude about this introduction, obviously it is a strategic partner, be it for EU in terms of economic partnership, but also for migration, or for the role that Algeria is playing for the Sahel region. It's a very military country, so Europeans must count on Algeria, but also it's important. It's an important partner for Russia. Algeria being, I don't know if it's the first or the second military equipment importer in Africa with Egypt, but the military budget is extremely high, and important partner as well for China. As in many other African countries, China has invested a lot in Algeria to build infrastructures along these years. So we are going back now to early 2019, when the Hirak began. So we usually say that the cause of this movement was the candidacy of Abdelaziz Bouteflika, who was the president at the time, for a fifth mandate. Bouteflika was in power since '99, and when he or the regime decided to make a fifth mandate, the people went to the streets, took the streets, and the Hirak began. But I think that it's important, in my opinion, to look at some deeper roots, because this has not been the unique cause of the protest. Algeria was going through an economic slump with a very high unemployment rate. It's very difficult to get objective statistics there, but we know that there is a big unemployment rate compensated by some massive informal economy. This trauma of the 90s for me is also one of the reason why the people also took the streets, and you will see after with the images that a lot of people made some analogy with this period of the 90s. We can also say that there has always been a big disdain of the population by a very opaque regime. That's another peculiarity of this country. We don't really know who is in charge of the power. We often talk about the deep state in Algeria, and it's a mix between the militaries and the DRS, which is the secret services, the presidency, and it's a very opaque regime, and it's very difficult to interpret who gets the power and who decides. And also there have been small protests in the past 20 years in the regions, asking for a few people asking for jobs or to get access to some basic commodities. And I think that all these can explain the roots of the movement. And in February, basically, we witnessed some protest in a few towns, and the 22nd all started in Algiers and in other cities of Algeria with a very massive protest. And I think that all observers have been very surprised with the magnitude of the protests. Today, I mean, the 22nd of February is considered as the start of the Hirak. So as I said, I'm going to when I covered I think there's someone with the microphone on.
Excuse me, can you turn off the microphone, please? Okay.
Thank you. So yeah, as I said, when I covered the movement, I received some assignments from foreign press, and I tried to have a documentary approach because it was such a diverse movement that then I tried to focus on each because basically the Hirak was like since the 22nd of February, every single Friday, a huge amount of population were taking the streets, and every Friday, basically, I tried to document a different aspect of the Hirak. So what I'm going to do during this presentation is to showcase 4 or 5, I think. Features of peculiarities of this movement. So the first one I want to discuss or to present is the role of the football ultras, the supporters. We've been very impressed by the role they have played in this movement. And I got very interested into the dynamic and the logic of these people. We have been impressed, as I was saying, with the political maturity of these groups of young people that usually come from poor class neighborhoods, and they showed a lot of creativity in their songs. For example, some of their songs became the anthems of the movement, and so you will see some pictures. we feel that we are in stadiums, but we are not. We are actually in the streets, in the middle of the protests, and these ultras recreated a kind of stadium atmosphere within the streets, and this was quite impressive. So an interesting anecdote about this movement as well is, for example, that I think it was around March 2019, there were a big derby match in Algiers with two of the biggest teams, in USMA and Mouloudia. It's as if you say Sporting Benfica here in Lisbon, let's say. And the police, the regime was quite afraid of this game, because they were thinking that everybody was, you know, going to meet at the stadium. But strangely, the supporters, they decided to boycott the game, arguing that the time was not to support their team, but to support Algeria. So basically, we were expecting thousands of people in the stadium, but no one showed up at the stadium, and they all went to the streets to demonstrate and to protest, asking for a better Algeria. So that was interesting moment to witness as well. So we can see here, for example, the two the different teams. There is a big rivalry between these teams, and it was incredible to see all these people protesting together, mixing with other different fringes of population. We can also see here in that picture a Palestinian flag. We know that in Algiers and in Algeria, mainly when there is a protest, there's a big, let's say, feeling of brotherhood with the Palestinians, and we've seen many Palestinian flags during the protests. So you see, I mean, we feel that we are in a stadium, but again, we are in some stairs in a famous narrow street of downtown Algiers, where supporters gather and sing together to the glory of the revolution. I remember this picture was the first protest I have covered was on the 8th of March. So that was on the 8th of March 2019, and that was it was the end of the protest. And these people, they are supporters from the club MCA, and they basically escalated a small building and again chanting with the rest of the population. The other aspect of the Hirak that I wanted to share with you is the use of, I would say, sarcasm and humor, and the fact that the Hirak became a big political forum, and a lot of Algerians expressed their creativity in the streets of the different cities of Algeria, because it's important to stress out that the protests, they were not only in the capital, they were happening all over the country, in big cities, but even in more remote and smaller cities. It was a true mass movement. But obviously Algiers, as the capital, was the place where everybody was gathering. So you see, for example, that we can see this picture a protester decided to make fun and of the regime and created fake covers of films. And basically, it's funny because I met this person several times, and every protest he had a new board with always a new creative board, and everybody was photographing him because he had a lot of success, I think. And well, then I became friends with this person, and he's very talented. So this was on the 8th of March as well. This is a student making fun of Bouteflika, because basically what I have to explain is that Bouteflika was ill. He got a stroke, I think, in 2013. So basically, he was not. I mean, Algerian people was not seeing him. So when there was an official ceremony or something like this, the regime was, instead of showing the president because he was not able to attend the meeting, they were showing a frame of the president. So the frame became the example of the declining regime of Bouteflika, and so it was. We could see at the beginning of the protest many people protesting with a frame because they wanted to denounce the nonsense of the situation, having a president that was not able to talk to its people, basically. This was also at the beginning of the protest. So as I said, it was 4 mandates plus 1 because they wanted the 5th mandate, but this is equal to 0, according to some of the protesters. This is for me an interesting, these are interesting images as well, because I think that the Hirak hasn't been only a protest movement saying no to anything, but we've seen many proposals, many solutions, many mini agoras taking place in the streets. And in these 2 images, we can see that the people, they come up with some solutions, identifying some names. How could we get out of this deadlock where we are at that time, because the government was trying to impose their solutions, but the people, they were saying no, there are other solutions. We want a real change. We want the real end of the system. We don't want anymore a military regime. We want a civilian regime, but a true one. And I think that the Hirak, in a way, was almost as a school for many people, as a political school, like a street political school for many people. A lot of people that young, the youth especially, they didn't have a lot of political experience, but within the Hirak and in the streets, you were in contact with this kind of information, and I think also it's very interesting in terms of in terms of type of protest. Also sarcasm, people denouncing the nonsense of the logics. Petroleum engineer without a job in an oil country. So these are the figures of the old regime. Yes, these protesters ask for them to be jailed. Some of them are actually, because of, and others not. This is so Nim was he's a cartoonist, a young Algerian cartoonist, and he had been arrested and jailed for publishing some cartoons on social networks. So the people that were asking for his release. I can't remember. I think he stayed a couple of months in jail, but he finally got released. Again, sarcasm. I will only go home when they will all be in jail. I think this board interesting as well. If we want to compare with the rest of the countries of the region, because when I talk with my peers or with friends from Algeria, they don't really want to. They don't want to compare the Hirak with the Arab Spring, and I quite agree with them, because it's different timing. Arab Spring took place in 2011, and it's 8-9 years after. And I think that the fact that the Hirak occurred roughly 10 years after the Arab Spring, a lot of people, they were very aware of the risks of the protest, especially the risks of recuperation of the protests. So we saw many boards like this saying, "Be careful. We don't want to end up like Syria or or the scenario in Egypt." Yeah, we could feel a conscience about the risks of the Arab Spring. And this is an image. So it said, "Thanks for having united us." For me, this is I took thousands of photographs in Algeria in 2019, but if you ask me what would be my my preferred image, I would say I probably say this one, because I think that it says it all. Because basically, what I felt while I was on the streets was a sensation of unity. I had the impression to witness the rebirth of a nation, because we were saying that Algerians, they were not able to unite between themselves and to fight for their rights, and I think that it is a very simple billboard, but it says it all. It's because the regime went too far, and in a way, these people were thanking them for having united the people, and every time I see this image, I remember of this day. Again, if you have any question, please feel free to ask. So the students also have played a significant role in the protests. As I was saying, the protest used to occur on Friday, every single Friday. And the students took the initiatives to add a second day in the week to protesting on every single Tuesday. So Tuesday was a day when students were protesting, but they were also joining the rest of the protest on Friday. But the Tuesday was a specific day for the students. So I followed them a couple of Tuesdays. This is an interesting image as well, because we see during a student protest, the boy on the left side has an Amazigh, so a Berber flag on his back, and this is, I don't want to get into too much details, but this is interesting because for many years we couldn't raise this Amazigh flag, so the region of Kabylie and other regions, all the Amazigh people throughout Algeria. But during the beginning of the Hirak, we were seeing many of these flags. After it became more problematic because the regime tried to target the people wearing these flags. But for me, again, this is Algeria. So students as well using a lot of sarcasm and taking the streets. So we can see at the background of the image also, you are poisoned and we are the antidote. So we call the regime is called the system. As I was saying, it's very opaque. So so we usually describe the regime as the system. So a small equation asking for the system to get out. So basically, these students say, you have your tanks and we have our ideas, making an analogy to the military system. And then little by little, basically, as I was saying, the Tuesday was the day for the students, but then it became very mixed, and a lot of people, all the people were joining the protest on Tuesday, on the Tuesdays as well. This is interesting as well. It was in April, I guess. And as I was saying, the Hirak became a kind of laboratory for new ideas. So these students, they were basically writing down some post-its and sticking them to the bus stops throughout Algiers. So writing down their dreams or their angriness or different different opinion. So the third attribute of the Hirak that I covered, I got an assignment for a magazine, and we were with a journalist, we had to cover the role of the feminists. So as you can see, it's a very diverse movement, and everybody was there. So the feminists, basically, they were gathering at a little square. They called themselves the Le Carré Féministe, so the feminist square, and they were gathering there. It's close to the University of Algiers, and they were joining at this place at the beginning of the protest, and there basically they were claiming for their rights, for more equality between men and women, and paying tribute to feminist figures, Algerian feminist figures, and they were claiming their rights during half an hour before joining the rest of the protest. So it was a way for themselves to claim for their rights, but being part of the Hirak at the same time. So, for example, this board says "Madirohesh blabina," meaning don't do the revolution without us. We are part of us as women. We are part of this protest, and yeah, don't do it without us. We're part of it. So yeah, that was the start of the feminist square. So you can see the pictures, the images of important women figures or victims of terrorism as well. Nabila Jahnin has been killed during the 90s, I think in 95, and she was an activist. So they always had these girls always had these images and protesting, and as I said, mixing with the rest of the people. Asking for a state of law and for their rights. So as you can witness, it was another important aspect of the Hirak is that it was a very peaceful protest. One of the slogan of motto of the protest was Silmiya, meaning peacefully. So I witnessed very little violence in the streets, and many people. So we are not afraid of you. Get out. And to finish, I'm going to show you that this protest also was a mix of generation. I saw people that were people who were protesting for the first time since the independence of Algeria, since '62, protesting with their grandkids, mixing with all kind of people, different backgrounds, different social backgrounds as well. It was and everybody mixing up, and this was also very emotional for as an observer, documenting this. I remember, for example, this image, and I talked with this guy. His name, he's called Nassim, and he was basically protesting with his grandmother for the first time. They were protesting together, and he was basically protecting her during the whole march. And and I saw them an hour or two later, and he was taking her in his arms because she was exhausted. She has been walking for hours and hours, and you could see many scenes like this again. So kids, old people, you killed our hopes. You stole our hopes. So yeah, the solidarity was a key word in these protests. So this person as well was explaining to us that it was, as I was saying, it was the first time he was taking the streets since the independence. So that means a lot. They've been waiting for more than 50 years before going back to the streets. And it was, we had the feeling, and a lot of people were saying this, that it was for them, it was as a new independence, a second, the real independence, that, as if the independence has been stolen from the regime, and they were asking for independence, and a lot of people, yeah, asking for real independence. And I think that would be the last image. I think this was in April 2019, close to, because basically in Algiers we had many people coming from different directions, as if you say here in Lisbon, for the people that know Lisbon, people coming from Margem Sul, or other people coming from Cascais, other people coming from the north, and everybody was gathering at the center, commuting to this famous building called La Grande Poste, and so this created. So in terms of numbers, we don't really know, but I presume that in the big protests on certain Fridays there were more than 1 million people in the capital, without counting the rest in other cities. So just quickly to finish, I just want to share with you my personal experience as a photographer and the way I tried to document these protests. At the beginning, it was difficult for me to find the right distance, because I wanted to take parts of this protest, because I was I felt I was my place was among the protesters, but at the same time I had to document this, so it was very difficult to find the right distance. Am I part of the movement, or should I take the distance and remain and work as a photographer? So it has been very difficult to find this balance. The other thing I would like to stress out, and I talked about this with other photographers, we had the feeling that we had to take a lot of pictures. We had to document what was going on. And I think this is related also with the so-called civil war in the 90s, from which we have very little, very few images. This means that as if we miss some documents from what the country has gone through, and as we knew we were going through a very historical moment, we felt that we really had to document this and to archive these moments, and this is also true because normally it's very difficult to work in Algeria with a camera. Everybody gets very suspicious when you have a camera, be it the population or the police or the regime, or anybody. And during the Hirak, it was the complete opposite. I was getting stopped every 10 meters by people asking for photograph, and then we were exchanging our social networks, and they were asking me to send the images, and we just felt that the people, they were finally they were not afraid anymore, and that was as a photographer, that was a big change for me and my peers. And basically this is it. I had the impression to rediscover a nation. I had the impression to witness the rebirth of a nation. People were happy together, were talking to each other, even with these different backgrounds, because you have some, obviously in the street you have some Islamists, you have some seculars, some progressists, the feminists, the football supporters, old people, young people. It was very diverse, but it created a block of people asking for some real change. So I didn't want to enter very much into the political aspect, first because I'm not an expert, but I think it's a bit difficult. But as a conclusion, I just want, and this might be an introduction to questions if you have some. Politically, what were the achievements of the Hirak? First, I would like to say that for me, it has been, because today, after 2 years, you have some people saying that the Hirak was useless and didn't achieve anything, but I quite disagree with that. I think that first, the regime had to change its strategy, even if I think that we still have the same policy makers. We had to change. The regime had to change its strategy. So with new figures, with the new people, and I think this is this can be considered as an achievement. The other thing is that the people, Algerian people, they allow themselves to occupy public spaces again, because since the 90s, we had the impression to live under a situation of permanent siege, let's say, and it was very emotional to see all these people taking back the streets. And on top of that, as I was saying before, it was also very interesting to see these people talking in the streets, making some proposal, gaining some political maturity throughout the protests. I think this has been a very important achievement of the Hirak. And we just feel that today, if you speak with Algerians, even if there is no more protest, or the protests have started again since the COVID, I think it's been 3 weeks that slowly the protests have started again. But you just feel that the people are aware and they know what's happening, and they are not believing everything that that we say to them. So I think, roughly speaking, this is also one of the bigger achievements. What about tomorrow? We really don't know. It's very difficult to predict what is going to happen in the next months. As I said, I think the logics of the regime is still the same, even if there are new people managing it. But the thing is, on the other hand, as it was so diverse, I think that the Hirak was not able to offer a real political alternative to the regime. Interesting fact is that from the Hirak, we haven't seen any figures emerging from the movement and representing the movement. And I think that on one hand, the strength of the Hirak is because it was so diverse, but on the other hand, the weakness is also because it was so diverse that we haven't managed to see any emerging leader from the movement. So it became a kind of mass protesting, but without consistent political achievements. And I think that we'll see. The president has called for general election in next June. But I think, yeah, these next months will be very important to see how the situation is going to evolve. And that's it. I hope I haven't been too long.
Not at all.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Sabri. Thank you very much for sharing this with us with pictures, this portfolio, and also for focusing on the different actors involved in it. We can open the floor to the public. I think that we have more or less half an hour. But actually, I would like to take the opportunity to start because if it's possible, I mean, you describe Iraq about as a movement founded on solidarity, cross-generational movement, but how actually these different political actors cooperated. You mentioned Feminist Square, if I am not wrong. What do you mean? So they were taking part in different spaces, or how it worked?
Basically, in Algiers, there were no leaders, there were no logics, but at the same time there were the right mix. So the thing is, everybody was meeting at downtown Algiers, converging to the same place, but you feel that it was very spontaneous from these different fringes of the movement. So there were no real organization, but every single parties were organizing themselves. For example, the feminists obviously they talk between themselves and say, okay, we're going to gather at this place. So it was always the same place, close to the Central University of Algiers, and they were always at the same place. And you had it was that's the thing. It was very spontaneous. The only common thing is that the people were meeting at the same place, so converging from different parts of Algiers to the same place, to the downtown to downtown Algiers.
But there was a common political agenda.
Not really, not really. I guess that the agenda was where everybody was agreeing on was the asking for the regime to leave and asking for a new Algeria, and then so that was the message. And the other thing is that many times what I have witnessed is that, for example, during the week, the government takes some measures. And on Friday, which is equivalent to the Sunday, because it's the rest day, the weekly rest day, on Friday, you have the weekly protest, and the people are responding to the measures of the government that have been taken during the week, the previous week. So it was as if I don't know, the regime was trying some strategies and seeing if the population was accepting it or not. So the political agenda was changing according to that. Every week it was a different political agenda, but the recurring idea was, we want a new independence, we want a civilian state, we don't want any more military states, and we want justice and a new Algeria, basically. And then everybody was coming with his own smaller political agenda, but that was the main idea.
Thank you, Sabri. So anyone else? Any other comment, question?
Christian?
Thanks. Good evening. At first, I was gonna ask about what changed in the reaction of people to you taking pics, but then I heard that you already answered that. So I would like to ask if the I would like to ask what Bouteflika did in order to be popular, because you said that he was very popular among Algerians, among students. So I just was curious about what he did to achieve it.
I don't. Maybe I made myself misunderstood, because I don't think he was popular among Algerians. You mean Bouteflika, the former president?
Yeah, the former president, but maybe
Yeah.
I just misunderstood what you.
Yeah, I think it was. I wouldn't say, because I mean, just if you see the size of the protests and the magnitude of the movement shows that he was not popular at all. I think that the regime was able to buy some and to co-opt some fringes of the population with what I said in the introduction, with this subsidies policy, but truly maybe in the beginning, the very beginning of his term in '99, because Algeria was getting out of terrible years of these decades of terrorism and everything. So maybe he had a bit of yeah, a bit of political, let's say, you know, people they were thinking he was a good president because he decided to he managed to in a way, I don't know if he managed or it was that time, but at the end the terrorism ended in Algeria. But I think that yeah, I don't really think he had a lot of support from the population. On the contrary.
Okay, thanks. Maybe.
And regarding it's true, regarding the change of mentality was very clear regarding the images, and this has been very shocking in a way to me, because it was strange to see how many people wanted to be photographed when normally when you are seen with a camera, people are getting very suspicious and they don't really want to be photographed. So this has been a change, but I think it was very temporarily during the protest, because I don't think I haven't been to Algeria since for a year now, because the borders are closed mainly. But I think, yeah, I think this was very it was because of this Hirak, and because we were experiencing a very strong cohesion between the people.
May I ask something else?
For sure.
Okay. You said that the population was not very sure about what the figures in the government used to do, or it was not clear to many who was the right person in charge.
Yeah.
So I didn't understand it completely. If you could explain it.
The thing is, since the independence of Algeria in '62, it has been so it might be difficult to understand, but the thing is, we have what we used to call les décideurs, so the ones who decide, basically. But most of the time, the ones who decide, they do not appear frontline. So you have a civilian facade with a president, with ministers, but the ones who decide remain hidden. And this is a peculiarity of the Algerian regime, and I think this is a reason why it is still as strong, because you can't really identify who's in charge and who decides, and that's a peculiarity of the Algerian regime. Obviously, we know that it's the military and the état-major who has a lot of power, who eventually make the decisions. But it's even for very informed Algerians, it is very unclear to say, okay, this person is in charge of this and this one is in charge of that. But it's a whole opaque regime. But I think they look for this opacity because once you are not identified, you can't be targeted, or you can't be you don't have to respond to your act.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks for asking.
Sabri, there are 2 more questions on the chat.
Yes.
Are you able to read them?
Yes. Do you know how Do you know why such an impactful movement like the Hirak didn't have a powerful presence in mainstream Western media, like the Portuguese media? And as an Algerian photographer, do you believe that your work is limited to the media sphere of Arab countries? If so, how can you challenge that limitation? Okay, this is I think it's a very relevant question. Firstly, because a lot of people were asking in the streets for more international coverage, and they were complaining that there were no mainstream international coverage. And I think one of the reasons is very simple. Is because Algerian authorities didn't let foreign media correspondents to get into the country, or they were making very difficult to obtain visa. You know that to get into Algeria you need a visa, and I know, for example, I worked with an Italian journalist. And basically, she told me that she asked for a visa right after the 22nd of February, and she had to wait maybe 6 weeks to get a visa, and she only got 5 days. So what they did is to say that they were granting visas, but they were making very difficult logistically to come. So they call her, the embassy call her on Friday and says, okay, your visa is from Monday and you have only 5 days. So it's very difficult for foreign media correspondents to get into the country and to make the coverage. And I think that, so same for the Portuguese media, obviously. And I think that that as we said, Julia, in the introduction, Algeria is a very significant country, and I think it should be more on the agenda of the foreign press. But as I said, it's difficult for foreign journalists to come and work from the ground. I think that for historical reasons, obviously, there were more coverage in the French press, but I've met a couple of foreign journalists from Italy, from the Netherlands, from Spain, coming and covering the movement. And the second question is, could you be more clear about the differences between Arab Spring and Hirak? First, I think that Algeria has its own agenda, meaning that, for example, that's why I insist quite a lot about the 90s. It's because, and this was even less covered at that time, but Algeria has gone through all these Islamist secular opposition throughout the 90s. Years before other countries such as Libya or Syria or other Arab countries, and I think that it's a fact of timing only, because when we talk about Arab Spring, we talk about this movement that took place in 2000, that started in Tunisia in 2011, end of 2010. And then expanded to other countries, to Libya, Egypt, and so on. And to be very clear about that, it is true that at that time there had been some very tiny protests in Algiers, and I remember that at that time, if I'm not wrong, the government decided to decrease prices of basic commodities such as sugar, or I remember about sugar, and then it all calmed down, and the fact that Algeria has not gone through this Arab Spring at that time means that it's a different timing, and it's a different different perspective.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eduardo.
Anyone else in the public?
I think that Tiago, you wanted to ask something?
Hi, yes, I was waiting for if anyone in the audience wanted to ask a question. No, very interesting presentation. I really like the usage of photography as a way to create a narrative to tell us the story of what happened in Algeria, which, I didn't know anything. So it was just quite interesting, and thanks for informing us about that. I have a lot of questions, but I'll only make two of them. One is, you spoke a little bit about the political implications of the movement and what it resulted, but how did the government and the political powers reacted and repress the movement? And if so, how? And how did the movement adapt to that reaction? And the other thing that was kind of the back of my mind when I was listening to you was basically the colonial war. Because you talk about the 90s as a time that somehow inspired these movements as well, in which you see some references to it. But I was also thinking if there is any parallels with, basically if the colonial war resonates somehow with these protests, if they talk about that in the spirit of liberation, or, as making a parallel with the colonial oppressor and so on. Because if, for instance, in Portugal, no one talks about the colonial war, and that it's really interesting for us as researchers. It's completely forgotten in activism, and it's somehow coming back now. So I was interested to hear if that comes up, or if it's a completely traumatic experience that completely disappears from the activist vocabulary somehow. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Now, it's true that in terms of for the first question, in terms of repression and the results of the movement, what we must say that obviously if it's a peaceful movement, it's because also it hasn't been there was no strong repression from authorities. And I think obviously the first thing is that the protesters were very, very peaceful. There was some points of tension at certain time, especially in the beginning, where the protesters wanted to gather to the presidential palace, towards the presidential palace. And there were some repression from the regime, but it's true that it has been very, very peaceful. And as I said, one of the motto of the protest was Silmiya, which in Arabic means peaceful. And when you could feel the start of some tension, even within the protesters, because sometimes with so many people in the street, you have some tensions. Everybody was starting to sing Silmiya, Silmiya, meaning like let's remain peaceful. And this is another aspect of the movement, as if Algerians wanted to show to themselves and to the world that they were very, very peaceful and with a big sense of solidarity. So it was incredible. The people basically, I haven't shown pictures of that, but the people that were cleaning the streets after the protests. So you were seeing like they were organizing themselves, and the people that were basically taking off the trash from the streets and cleaning all the streets. So it was crazy to see that the streets after the protest and the passage of millions of people were cleaner than in the other days of the week. For example, there were people that were, when it was very hot, they were throwing water from the balconies to refresh protesters. They were sharing meals in the streets. It has been very, very, very peaceful, and this has to be stressed out. Regarding the colonial war, I think it's a very relevant question, and I think it resonated very much in the protest. Maybe I haven't insisted on that, but it's true that the people, they were referring this movement as a new independence, referring to the independence from France. And an image that comes back to my mind is that I have seen many of Algerian flags, and the people that were showing these flags as flags from the independence. So you could see that there were very old flags, and these demonstrators were saying that I am taking out these Algerian flag for the second time in my life. So I went protesting on the 5th of July, 62 for independence. And now for me, it's the second independence, and I go back to the street with the same flag. So a lot of, and also people showcasing a lot of pictures of historical figures of the colonial war, of the independence of Algeria, making a lot of references to historical figures from that period. So it resonated very much indeed.
If I may, I have a very quick last questions and comments, maybe before finishing our session. I really enjoyed your presentation, and particularly I was really interested in this different repertoire of contention, let's say, also the involvement of football supporters and this symbologies from the football, which is also something that is happening in other social movements, and I think it's very interesting. And also this different protagonists, very in generalized protest, let's say, with the involvement of very different profiles of people. I also was very interested in your last point about your personal perspective, that is the perspective of someone that is in between. Of course, you are on the side of the protesters, but also you would like to maintain a certain distance to cover what's happening. And I think this is something that is very important. We all social researchers in social sciences working on social movements, we deal with these things. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's very nice and interesting to develop this reflection, especially when we deal with qualitative information. Of course, if we work on surveys, etc., this is simpler maybe, but if we are living together with social movements in a daily way, this reflection I think is an advantage in itself. So if it's well framed, this is well reflected, I think this auto reflection is very important. It's part of our ethnographical work. So I would like to know a little bit more about you, how you deal with this, and how you introduce yourself, for instance, to people. How you work exactly? Like you go to the demonstration, you start to talk to people. How is your daily experience with this, with the protests, with the protesters, and kind of just some empirical data about your work in this sense. Yeah. And also if you have contact with the organization, all this moment where things are not in the streets, in the backstage, let's say, when things are organized, the organizer meet. If you have some experience of this and in this sense, so this is my
Okay. Yes, Guya. It's true that it's an interesting point. This distance you may have with the protest, either as a photographer or as a researcher. I think when you work with social movements, it's very difficult to keep that the correct distance with the movement, and especially in my case, for example, as an Algerian, it was very complicated as we were facing a historical moment. It was very difficult for myself to maintain the correct distance, and I think that in terms of way of organizing my work, it was very different. I think I would separate two moments: while I am on assignment, and when I'm not. When I'm on assignment by foreign media, I think I go to the street with the cap of the foreign photographers, and I have an objective. I have to document a very specific feature of the movement, while I am not on assignment and I produce for myself, let's say. It's very different, and I feel more, I think I am closer to the people, and I go to speak with them, and I spend more time, and I go to at my own rhythm. And I think it's very different now that I'm looking at it with some experience, with some perspective. I think that I would separate these two aspects. And regarding the organization, and yes, I have been in contact with a couple of student organization. There is a committee, because I haven't talked about this, but it's true that when we're talking about repression, it's true that during the protest there were not strong repression from the authorities, but a lot of people have been arrested, have been jailed, have been put in jail for many months for no reasons, basically, or because they were carrying a flag, or because they were at the wrong place at the wrong moment, basically. So I got in touch. Yeah, I was in contact with this committee who is organizing the defense of the people that have been targeted and have been put in jail. And it's true that once you get into the backstage of this, it's another reality. You see it as a more organized structures, but each structure work quite independently from each other. So yeah, that was my experience regarding this let's say the backstage of the organization of this protest.
Okay, I ask in this because personally I'm very interested to the moments when they are not in the streets. So what they're doing.
Yes, yeah, exactly. This, but it's true that
latency moment.
Yeah, it's true that you know, many times we even it's still unclear why the people went to the street on the 22nd of February. Why that day? Why so massively? And when we look back at that time, it's true that we've seen some things on the social networks and everything, but it's still unclear. So it's or even the board that you've seen, the sarcastic boards that you've seen during the presentation. I know that a lot of art schools, they were working on that, and then they were distributing these to many people in the streets. But it was very spontaneous, and each structure was working remotely and independently from each other.
Sure. Thank you. So Joao, well,
okay.
Put somewhere, but I'm not sure maybe if you can have a look and answer very briefly, but I think that there are not simple questions to be answered so quickly. But
Do you think that Bouteflika's government foreign policy has influenced the eruption of this movement, or was something exclusively propelled by domestic policies? Domestic policies, definitely, to be brief.
Wow.
No, honestly, yeah, I think that that's my own opinion, obviously, as a photographer, as a witness of the movement. But I really think that the foreign policy hasn't. There was no. Yeah, there was no, and even when you look at the movement, I remember the people saying no to foreign intervention. This is a bit ambivalent, because sometimes they ask for more coverage, international coverage, but at the same time they don't want foreign intervention. They want to build an Algerian solution to the crisis, and this is also something that differ from the Arab Spring, because we tend to say that the Arab Spring, there were a lot of foreign consultancy or foreign intervention, shadow cabinets working, but I think that in that case it was on Bouteflika's government or during the protest, it was a very domestic issue. And the second question, do you think it is possible to see Algeria follow Morocco and the Emirates in signing peace treaty with Israel and disregarding the Palestinian cause? Briefly as well, I don't think so. I don't think it's possible. And I think that that's another matter, obviously, but I think that another reason why Algeria is significant, is important in the region, is because it shares borders with Morocco, that has signing some peace agreement with Israel. There is this Western Sahara conflict that Algeria is backing up the Polisario, and I find it very difficult, at least in the short term, that Algeria would follow the Moroccan initiative.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Hello. I don't know if there's time, but I was wondering if I would ask something, but since you've kind of got to the subject of the Western Sahara.
This is the really very last question. Thank you so much, Beatrice.
So just to add that Morocco signed this because it was an agreement with the United States, so that the United States would recognize the sovereignty of Morocco on the Western Sahara. So that was a 50-50 deal. So it's probably not the same with Algeria. But also, have you, as a photographer, ever seen the Sahrawi people in Algeria and ever documented this, or know someone, or the Tindouf camp, for example?
Yes, I have seen very few in Algiers, but even during the protest, I remember I have seen a couple of Saharian people protesting in Algiers within the movement. But I haven't done this kind of job. I know a very good friend of mine. I can give you the contact after if you want. A photographer that spent a lot of time in Western Sahara and has done a remarkable documentary work, still going on actually. Yeah, I haven't really done I haven't done this, but it's interesting to just to conclude that on this matter on Western Sahara, I see many in Portugal. I see many people that are very interested in the matter, which is not the case, for example, in France. In France, it's a more remote matter. But I see that in Portugal, in Spain, obviously, but in Portugal more specifically, I see many people interested in the matter. So who knows? Maybe that will be a future project for documentary photography. Who knows?
Yes, thank you. And I love the contact, if you really don't mind, because this is probably on my thesis topic. That's why I.
Okay, definitely. I will give you it's one of the, I think, the most precise and objective person on the matter.
Maybe I can share your contact with in the chat, Sabri.
Sure.
Or see.
Sure. I think the best way, I will share it with you. The best way I give you it's my Twitter account and Instagram account.
Perfect.
So that it's
that's great. I think that well, I think we had a great session. I'm very happy for today's session. It would have been nicer to meet face to face, but this way also we could have people that maybe are not in Lisbon. So there is always an advantage also in these online sessions, because we can achieve people that are not here. So thank you very much, Sabri. Just once more, some quick information about the next seminars. We have on the 21st of April, we have with us Diana Fu from the University of Toronto, talk about protests in China, but we still don't have a specific topic and title. On the 26th of May, we will have with us Julia Quaggio from the Complutense University of Madrid with a presentation on framing Latin American and Spanish peace and anti-NATO movements during the late Cold War. After we move to June with Zaccaria Mampili from the Marx School of Public and International Affairs at the City University of New York on the 2nd June. He will deal with, he will give a picture of the landscape of a different picture, they say, than Sabi, like a written picture of the landscape of protesting and also the constraints of COVID time in post-Saharan sub-Saharan Africa. And on 7th of July, we will have Elena Hernandez. She's a master student at ISCTE, and she will talk about the role of women in the housing struggle in Lisbon. And so these are the last information. For today, we can finish here. Thank you once more to Sabi. And Julia, I don't know if you want to say something, some conclusive words.
Well, maybe we can say that when will be possible to go back to Algeria and Sabri will be able to enter the country, maybe you can organize a second talk with him, also to say how the movement, if and how the movement has transformed his practice and his strategies throughout the last year. Why not?
I'm just waiting for the borders to open.
Yeah.
Hopefully, yeah.
Hopefully.
I can imagine. Tiago, you want to say something? Tiago is a co-organizer with us of the cycle of seminars. So hi, Tiago. I didn't introduce you before. So now.
Am I still here? Because like I seem to be having some troubles with the internet today. I don't know why. No, thank you very much, Sabri. It was really, really interesting, and I hope we get the chance to
maybe
to meet again and to talk about all of these issues.
With pleasure. Thank you again, Julia and Guya, for the invitation, and it was a pleasure for myself as well to share with you some stories about Algeria.
Good. So the video of the session will be on our website, on the CIES website. Maybe I just put the link also on the chat, so you can here you can find in a few days, maybe already tomorrow, the link of this session, and also the links of the other sessions with the YouTube, the video on our YouTube channel. Okay, so have a nice end of the day. I will still teaching, so it's not in my case, but well, I hope to see you soon and maybe in the next session. Thank you very much, and bye-bye.
See you.
See you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.